Hello, everyone, and thank you, Ryan, for the introduction. Yeah, it's been quite a few years that we've known each other, and it's awesome to be here today. For as long as I can remember being in product, I've been told that the product manager should be the CEO or the mini CEO of the product. Marty Kagan told us that product teams should be more empowered, that we should be in the room when the big decisions are being made. So we started to think and believe that who should really run the world as product managers. That we should be in the room when the big decisions are being made, that we should be more product-led. And yet, when I talk to product managers every week, they still tell me after all these years that they feel disconnected from the business, that they feel like they have to fight with other departments about priorities all day, every day, that they feel like they're shipping every day, but they're really just stuck in the backlog and don't have that seat at this figurative table. And having a seat at this table might mean different things to different people in this room here today. It might mean being on the same table with Mark Zuckerberg like Bowen is. How cool. It might mean getting that promotion to a more strategic role, like a head of product role. Or it might simply mean that in your current role as a product manager today, you feel like you're really being heard when you propose something to your leadership team. And I always believe that we should focus on the things that are in our control today. That's always been my philosophy. I think it takes a very long time to be invited to these tables. So today's talk is really about the things that we can do today to get out of that backlog and get onto these tables, to get a seat at the table. Ryan already did a great introduction about myself, where I actually started my career. I'm originally from Germany. I started at a company called Dativ, which is similar to Xero over here. Actually started as a developer, then moved into design roles, then into product management roles for marketplaces and a lot of fintechs specifically. Worked for eBay over in Europe, which was awesome, and then over the last 10 years here in Asia Pacific more specifically. Was then the VP of product at Rome, where I grew a large product management team. We went through an acquisition in 21, where we got acquired by a large global tech company. And that was really the first time I got a sense and a taste for what business executives actually look at, because they were literally putting dollar values at every single thing that we're doing in the day-to-day. And then fast forward today, I run the insights-driven PM, so coaching resources tools on product management and specifically how to work with data and metrics. That's my passion topic, and also running Busy, a marketplace for business lending. So if you run a business here in New Zealand, come check us out. So I guess the theme in my experience has been, I've been really bad at sticking to a specific job description. I like to always dabble outside my role, and I think that opened a lot of doors for me. But also, now that I sit on the side of running a business, I can share today what I see in other people that I really appreciate, which is the business thinking that they bring to their product roles. So let's get started. The interesting thing is actually that business thinking is really in our product DNA. Who here has seen this diagram before from Mind the Product about the history from product management? A few shy hands. Thank you, in the back. So before we had Scrum and Agile and Lean and all these things come up, the absolute origins of the product management role as we know it today is actually from 1931, from a brand memo, which was basically a job description, which was the foundation for the product management role as we know it today. And this job memo was defining a role of what they called brand men. Not sure if they had brand women back there, but basically what it was, the executives, this was at Procter & Gamble, so fast-moving consumer goods space before it moved into tech. What they were struggling with was executives were really stretched across all these different departments, all these different products, so they wanted to have basically like a mini GM, mini CEO that looks after one product start to finish. So market research, field testing, product development, but also packaging, promotions, sales, and revenue. That was the foundation of the role, and then it evolved over time. And then I think we got a little bit distracted on the way. I don't know where exactly we got lost, but my guess was it was somewhere when we got really deep into Agile and really deep into Scrum, and it was all about the product development side, and we got really hyper-focused on that. But I do think what we forgot on the way is all the other parts of the product management role as it was originally defined. So now we got distracted with choosing the hottest new prioritization framework, summoning developers with Jira tickets, and the worst one out of all, Gantt charts, doing project management all day. None of these things are really at the core of the product management role. So we need to go back to the core of our DNA and really think like business owners again. Let's go into what that actually looks like in the day-to-day. The other day, we had our weekly planning session at Busy, the marketplace for business lending that we run. And we were discussing different ideas that we can prioritize. And our product and design lead came up with this amazing customer journey. She proposed that we should nudge our customers, support our customers better through the sign-up and the loan application journey. So how it works, business owners come to our site, they tell us what they need finance or capital for. Basically, it's a loan application process online. Then they get quotes and can compare different options on the platform. So she suggested to do all these different nudges after 24 hours, after a day, after 7 days to guide them through this process. And I loved it. I thought it was brilliant and really well thought through. But I hesitated. Just before, we have gone through the monthly goals, and our key KPI and our key goal right now was actually to focus more on lead generation. And before I could even say anything, she went, you know what? None of this actually matters if we don't get enough leads through the top of the funnel. And that was a moment when a huge weight fell off my shoulder, because it's not like in that moment I wanted to say no, and your executives or your leadership team, they don't enjoy saying no to great ideas. It's just that sometimes other things are more pressing in the business right now. And then without dwelling on it, we started to ideate ways we can get more leads and signups to our site. Simple as that. So that's what business thinking really looks like in the day-to-day. It's that pragmatic view of what really matters in the business. And I also thought about the other people that I used to work with over all these years in product. And it wasn't that they had this amazing financial background or, people really think business thinking is going through all the financials of the company and knowing all the details in and out. That's not what it is about. It's really a mindset. And I don't have hard data on this, but I have found that a lot of these people I really enjoyed working with over the years in product are people who have also dabbled in other things outside of their product role. So to share a few examples, our product and design lead, Thea, who's also here in the room today, sells these amazing online recipes and online content, partners with brands, monetizes that on the side of, being part of a startup. Vivek, sorry if Vivek is in the room, I have not told you you'll be featured in this presentation today. He runs a jewelry business as well as a compliance and anti-money laundering blog on the side of being a product manager. And then Anna, she used to be in my product team in the Rome days. She was doing all sorts of things. She had this card game that she launched on Amazon. She was selling this protein powder called Not Coke. Don't know if that's still going today. And now she's running this AI CRM tool. So the point here being, it's really not so much a job description or a specific thing to follow. These people just have this curiosity about trying different things, going outside of just building things. For all these different things, they had to think about the packaging, the advertising. In the food space, you have to think about health and safety and the whole production of the product. So that's really what it is about. It's about thinking about all the different areas of the business and the trade-offs you sometimes have to make. Now that we've gone through the mindset, the way of thinking, the way of approaching it, that really curious mindset on how I believe we should approach product. Let's go. I'm German, so I like my pragmatic takeaways. So we'll go through 3 key questions that you can ask yourself in the day-to-day that can serve as really powerful reminders to think more like a business owner. The first one is asking yourself, what does the business really need right now? So this is about business context. And it's about understanding what is the business vision, why do you exist, where do you want to head to, but also your actual business goals. And that is where I find the first gap usually appear. It's that knowledge of what are your actual goals for the year, and with that we mean business goals, your financial revenue growth goals, and usually there are also some goals around cost reductions or cost savings, making things more efficient. It's one of these two things, usually a combination of both. And when I talk to most product managers in the day-to-day, they can't answer this off the cuff. They have to look at the last company update or go to some slide. So this is the first gap we need to fill, is to really be clear when you communicate in the day-to-day, you need to be aware what are the goals that we're working towards. Because it really matters knowing whether you have to grow the company by 5% or by 50% in the year. It would change your decision making. And then the second gap, some magic strategy happens, and we end up with a list of features. And this list of features is somehow magically going to contribute to our business and revenue growth goals for the year, right? So that's a second gap we need to fill to really get business context. And I know you guys love a framework. And this is the metrics one-pager that I've personally been using, and I created and refined over the last 5-6 years, and all the teams that I've worked with, we use it now at Busy, and it really helps us bring all the things together. So not just the business vision, but then also mapping out what are the actual business goals we're working towards for the year. Again, you don't need to get into the absolute detailed financials here, but just knowing by how much do we need to grow, what's that revenue growth number, and what are the areas that we might be looking at for efficiencies. And then you can boil it down into usually 4 different buckets. This is obviously simplified, but I find most activities usually fall into one of these core areas. It might be that you either want to acquire new customers, so you're going to get that revenue growth through acquiring customers in a specific customer segment. It might be that you want to activate and you get a lot of signups, but you need to activate them through the funnel to actually adopt and use your product. It might be that you have a lot of customers, but you need to engage them more, increase the depth of value you're providing to them. Or you might have a churn problem, and you have to really focus on that to reach your growth goals. At Busy, for example, at the moment, we're in our first year in business, so we focus quite heavily on the acquisition. Now that we get customers coming through the door, we obviously also have to focus on nurturing through the customer journey. We'll get to that in a second. And it's not like a linear journey either, but I'm sure there will be a point where we have to shift focus again. When I was working with eBay over in Europe, it was their local Swedish marketplace that was part of eBay. Our core revenue, 90% of our revenue actually came from one specific target customer, which was their power sellers. So we relaunched their application, the whole mobile stack, and we made sure that we focus on activating that core customer segment. So I hope you get the idea. The goal is here really to understand not just the top-level business goals and then have a list of features. It's that narrative of how these things link together and really asking yourself, which bucket are you working on right now? And also, are you working on the most important bucket? Could you maybe lend your hand in some other areas of the business that are really critical to reach your goals? That is where I find usually opportunity sits. So then, when you present to leadership, and I was guilty of that, especially in my UX design days, instead of saying, we're redesigning the onboarding flow to make it more user-friendly, you can now say, this will improve our customer experience and help with this year's goal to reduce customer acquisition cost. It's a simple change, but with that business context in mind, it's a completely different framing, and you will really get a lot more attention from the leadership team when you propose your idea. Then the next question is, where do you get that business context? That's something I get asked all the time. So here's an example from Xero, because everyone knows Xero here. This is from the last annual financial reports to the shareholders. This is publicly available. It shows you the aspirations, the vision, but also the growth goals that they have, as well as the segments, Australia, UK, US, some core product areas. It just gives you that business context and that narrative. Again, we don't have to go through all the details of the financials here. Just to have that narrative and that context is important. If you don't work for a large publicly listed company like Xero, this should be usually shared in your company all hands. So that's option number 2. Option number 3, if neither of this is available to you, go and ask the leadership team. They will appreciate you being curious about it and making sure that, and they'll see that you want to connect your work to it. So this is your homework for today, to think more like a business owner. Really get clear on what your business is trying to achieve. Because business thinking is to be aware of the business context and connect your work to it every day. Question number 2 you can ask yourself. This is my favorite one. Does this even have to be a feature? So let's go back to the story from before, the customer journey, where we wanted to help customers that come to Busy, to our platform, to support them through the loan application and the onboarding and the comparing of different finance options. We did eventually revisit this because this is important, and now our priorities have shifted. And so we mapped out the ideal customer journey, but even now, we actually didn't decide to build any of it. What we're doing instead is customers sign up to the platform, and I know we're a digital marketplace, it's all online, it's all technology driven, but the most impactful thing I find at the moment is they sign up, I give them a call. I get to actually ask them, what brought them to the platform. I get to hear all their concerns. Getting finance is scary. It's a really scary process. So it's a great way to get qualitative data. And it was a bit unnerving at the start. It wasn't my first instinct, but it really helped to not just build a feature that explains these things, but actually just pick up the phone and talk to the customer in this first moment. Then after a day, we sent them an email of what's next. Again, didn't have to build a feature yet. We used MailChimp to set up an automated email. Works a treat. And then once they get different quotes, we try to help them through the comparison process, pros and cons of different lending options and finance options. Very fun process to go through. We actually have written a blog article and sent that to them. So my point here being is just think outside the product box. This is your chance to think outside of the backlog and not just jump to, we have to build another feature. And it might well be that we do build these things over time. This is a great way to experiment, but some of these, like for example, the phone call, I'm pretty sure we'll also leave because it's so powerful. Another example I wanted to share on this, I was working with Hum Group over in Australia on one of their fintech products, which was basically a online personal loan journey. I was tasked with going through the customer reviews and improve the customer experience. And so I went through all these reviews and found that a common theme in the negative reviews was that customers were getting suspended because there was some fraud trigger, suspicious use, sometimes was triggered rightly, sometimes wrongly. But the worst part was, you can see it in the first review, most of them got suspended, tried to reach out to support, no one responded. And so that's when they were getting frustrated and vented in the App Store. So again, there was some parts to fix in the product around this, but it was actually a lot more also the support experience. And the customer doesn't care whether this is a product thing or marketing thing or support thing. For them, they just engage with your brand, your product, and it's all one holistic experience. So in this case, I sat down with support and we hashed out the response times, how we can change the copy in the product. It was really a collaborative effort to improve the customer experience. Again, it does not always have to be a feature or a product thing that we need to change. So going back to the business context, think about what issue are you really trying to fix at the moment, and what are the different ways you could go about this. This is what a business owner would do. because business thinking is about collaborating across the business, not just in your backlog, and just getting it done, whatever the highest priority is in the business. And the third question, what if this was your own money? Great question to use to reflect. We're now running ads for Busy. We're running ads on LinkedIn, one of the platforms at least. And I see the charges in my mobile banking app from the business coming through every day. And at the same time, I look at the signups. I nervously watch, okay, is this actually creating new customers for us? Do we get a return on spending all this money? But there's a lesson here. Even if you aren't a business owner, if this isn't your budget, try to build that empathy for the people who have invested their money, who are owning that budget. They're up at night thinking about these things, like I am about these LinkedIn ad charges, right? Put yourselves in these shoes. Again, which of those buckets is your business owner or your leadership team really worried about? Because if they're really worried about cost savings or reducing certain overheads, the last thing you want to do is propose some things that will now just push for an additional hire for helping with your admin or additional spend on development costs, right? Just build that empathy for what they're really worried about in this moment and present to that. Think about if this was your own money, would you spend it? Would you hire that additional person? So, your 3 questions, your 3 daily PM affirmations, whatever you want to call it. These are really powerful reminders you can use in the day-to-day to ask yourself and to be acting more like a business owner. And aside from your day-to-day in your product role, think about maybe this is the time to build a side hustle. This is such a good way to really sharpen your skills in all the different areas outside of just the product backlog. Because the one thing I hope you take away from today is that we need to think more like business owners again. We should be going back to our core, the DNA of how product management actually started, of being brand women and men, doing market research, field testing, product development, packaging, promotions, sales, and revenue, having absolute holistic overview and responsibility over a brand, and just caring about these different things, even if it is not in your job description. That is what I find will ultimately, if you embody this, if you grow your confidence in these other areas over time, you will be seen as someone who just needs to sit at this table. And I want to end, don't worry, I'll translate this in a second. I want to end with a German quote that for me just perfectly sums up that mindset of thinking like a business owner and how to get really that seat at the table. It says, man bekommt keinen Platz am Tisch, man schafft sich einen, which means you don't get a seat at the table, you create one. So with that, I want to thank you. Thank you for sharing your time with me. You can find me, I'm way too active on LinkedIn. You can find me there, or on insightsdrivenpm.com, or my book if you're interested in product analytics and data. I love this topic. And please do come up to me. I'll be around all day. Would love to chat and connect. Thank you so much.